There is something I need to tell you that most people will not say plainly. If you are between the ages of 75 and 85 and you still do certain things consistently, not perfectly, just consistently, then you are already far more unusual than you think. Because most people assume aging is simply a slow surrender. They assume that by the late 70s and early 80s, weakness is normal, forgetfulness is expected, slower movement is unavoidable, and loss of independence is just the price of having lived a long life. But that is not the full story. Yes, the body changes. Of course it does. The brain changes, energy changes, recovery changes, balance changes, sleep changes. But there is a massive difference between natural aging and accelerated decline. And over the years, one of the clearest patterns I have seen is this: the people who remain sharp, steady, capable, and deeply themselves in their late 70s and 80s almost always protect a small set of daily behaviors that other people quietly let go. Not extreme routines, not expensive hacks, not some impossible standard. Simple patterns, repeated long enough to become part of who they are. I'm Dr. Sophie Hale, and if you still do these 6 things between 75 and 85, you are truly one of a kind. And I want you to stay with me all the way to the end, because the number 1 habit on this list is the one that surprises people most. It is also the habit that often separates those who simply live longer from those who remain mentally alive inside their longer life. So let's begin with number 6. Number 6, you still get up with purpose. This may sound almost too ordinary to matter, but it matters more than most people realize. There is a profound difference between waking up because the day is happening to you and waking up because there is something you mean to do with it. After 75, many people do not lose capacity all at once. They lose momentum first. They stop having a reason to get dressed early, a reason to go outside, a reason to call someone, a reason to keep track of the day. And once purpose weakens, structure weakens. Once structure weakens, movement weakens. Appetite weakens, memory weakens, sleep becomes less stable, the entire system starts to loosen. Purpose is not just emotional, it is regulatory. When you still get up with purpose, your brain receives a signal that the day requires you. That signal changes how you move through the hours. You pay more attention, you initiate more action, you remain more connected to time, people, and responsibility. And responsibility, even small responsibility, is deeply protective in later life. This does not mean you need a career. It does not mean you need a packed schedule. It means there is something on the other side of waking up that belongs to you. Maybe you water the garden. Maybe you feed a dog that depends on you. Maybe you walk every morning at 8. Maybe you volunteer twice a week. Maybe you call your sister every afternoon. Maybe you keep the family birthdays in your own handwritten notebook because that is still your role. These things may sound small to outsiders. They are not small. They are anchors. The people aging best are not always the busiest. But they are rarely drifting. They tend to wake with some thread of intention, and that thread becomes the difference between being carried by the day and carrying yourself through it. The practical version is simple. Before bed, decide what tomorrow morning is for. Not the entire day, just the first meaningful thing, the first task, the first walk, the first obligation, the first point of direction. That alone can change the tone of a life. And here is the synergy that makes this habit even stronger. Purpose works best when it is visible. Write it down, say it aloud, tell someone. Once a purpose leaves the mind and enters the world, it becomes more likely to shape your behavior. Number 5, you still use your body instead of negotiating with every discomfort. I want to be careful how I say this, because I am not talking about punishing yourself. I am not talking about ignoring pain. I am not talking about pretending your 80-year-old body should perform like your 40-year-old body. I am talking about this: if you still ask your body to do real work, even modest work, then you are protecting one of the most important systems of independence you have left. Aging bodies do not only weaken because time passes, they weaken because demand disappears. When muscles are not asked to work, they begin to shut down their investment. Strength fades, stability fades, confidence fades. Then something else happens that is just as important. People begin to move less because they trust themselves less. And once fear enters movement, decline accelerates. The rare older adult, the one who stays impressively capable, usually keeps a relationship with physical effort. Not heroic effort, regular effort. Standing up without using the arms when possible, carrying bags. Walking farther than convenience requires, using stairs if they can, practicing balance while brushing their teeth, doing resistance band exercises a few times a week, stretching the hips, keeping the legs alive. This matters because strength is not just about muscle size, it is about access. Can you get off the floor? Can you catch yourself? Can you turn quickly? Can you open a heavy door? Can you lift what daily life asks you to lift? Those are independence questions. The people who age extraordinarily well do not worship exercise. They simply refuse to become strangers to effort. They understand something many people miss. Movement is information. Every time you move with control, your brain updates its map of what your body can still do. And when that map stays accurate and challenged, balance and coordination have a reason to stay sharp. A person who still moves with intention at 82 is often preserving far more than strength. They are preserving identity. Try this mindset shift. Stop asking, "What exercise should I do?" and start asking, "What abilities am I protecting?" Walking protects endurance. Standing from a chair protects power. Carrying objects protects function. Reaching, bending, and turning protect confidence. Those are not workouts. That is life maintenance. And the synergy tip here is this: combine movement with routine. Tie it to something that already happens. 10 squats after brushing your teeth. A walk after lunch. Balance practice while waiting for the kettle. Habits survive in old age not because they are dramatic, but because they are attached to ordinary life. Number 4. You still care how well you sleep. Not just whether you slept, but how. This is another place where people quietly lower their standards with age. They say, "Of course I wake up all night now. Of course I nap half the day. Of course my sleep is broken." And while sleep does change with age, poor sleep should never be treated as meaningless. Because by the time you are in your late 70s or early 80s, sleep is no longer just rest. It becomes one of the main repair windows your body still depends on. Your brain uses sleep to sort and stabilize memory. Your immune system uses sleep to recalibrate. Your mood depends on it. Your reaction time depends on it. Your balance the next day depends on it. Your patience depends on it. Your ability to think clearly under stress depends on it. When sleep becomes fragmented for long enough, older adults often do not only feel tired, they begin to feel less solid, less clear, less emotionally steady, less mentally quick. And because that change can happen gradually, many people do not recognize sleep as the root. But the older adults who remain impressively sharp often take sleep seriously. They do not treat bedtime like an afterthought. They tend to keep a steadier rhythm. They lower stimulation at night. They do not bring every worry to bed with them. They create conditions that tell the nervous system, "You are safe now, you may let go." That matters enormously. A nervous system that never fully comes down from alertness cannot restore itself properly. If you still protect your sleep, if you still value a regular bedtime, a quieter evening, a cooler room, a calmer mind, then you are doing something many people underestimate and few people do well. The practical approach is not glamorous. Reduce noise. Dim light earlier, keep waking time more consistent than you think necessary. Cut the habit of falling asleep to chaotic television or upsetting news. Let the last part of the evening become slower than the first. And one more thing, do not confuse exhaustion with restoration. Plenty of people are exhausted. That does not mean they are recovering. The synergy tip is to give your brain a landing strip before bed. 5 minutes of slow breathing, prayer, journaling, gentle reading, or simple stillness. A good night often begins long before your head touches the pillow. Number 3. You still eat in a way that supports strength, not just fullness. This one becomes increasingly important after 75 because the body is less forgiving of nutritional neglect. At younger ages, people can get away with eating randomly for quite a while. Too little protein, too much sugar, long gaps without nourishment, meals built mostly around convenience. Later in life, that margin shrinks. Now the body notices. Now recovery slows. Now muscle is easier to lose. Now the immune system is more sensitive. Now a week or two of poor eating can show up in your energy, your steadiness, your mood, and your resilience. The older adults who remain remarkably functional usually do not eat perfectly, but they do eat deliberately. They understand that food is not just comfort, it is construction. If your body is trying every day to repair tissue, maintain muscle, preserve bone, support the brain, regulate blood sugar, and keep the immune system ready, then it needs materials, real materials. That means enough protein, enough fluids, enough color in the diet, enough nourishment spread across the day so the body is not constantly borrowing from its own reserves. What often happens in the late 70s and 80s is subtle. Appetite drops a little, cooking feels like more work. People simplify, toast becomes a meal, tea becomes lunch, crackers become dinner, and because the weight loss can look gradual, it is often praised when it should be questioned. Not all weight loss in old age is a victory. Sometimes it is disappearing strength. The people who stay sturdy tend to protect real meals, not giant meals, useful meals. Eggs, yogurt, fish, beans, chicken, soup with substance, fruit that actually gets eaten, food that asks a little more of the body than sugar and starch alone. And just as important, they do not skip the meals that preserve them best. If you still eat in a way that supports function, if you still think about nourishment instead of only appetite, that sets you apart. The practical rule is this: ask whether each meal helps you remain capable. Does it support muscle, energy, recovery, alertness? If the answer is no, it may be filling you, but it may not be serving you. And the synergy tip here is to pair nourishment with planning. Most good eating in later life does not happen because of willpower. It happens because something helpful is already available. A cooked protein in the fridge, cut fruit, a simple soup, a dependable breakfast. Preparation protects dignity more than motivation does. Number 2, you still stay connected to people in a real way, not superficially, not occasionally, really. This may be one of the most overlooked signs of exceptional aging because people still talk about loneliness as though it is merely emotional. It is not merely emotional. Human beings are regulatory creatures. We steady each other, we sharpen each other, we mirror each other, we keep each other oriented. Conversation is not just pleasant, it is activating. When you talk with someone, especially face-to-face or in a meaningful call, your memory is involved. Your attention is involved, your timing is involved, your emotions are involved, your language is involved, your sense of humor, your judgment, your identity, your ability to respond in real time, all of it is being exercised. Isolation does the opposite. It narrows life. Days begin to blur. Thoughts loop. Language gets used less dynamically. Motivation drops. And once a person starts saying, "I just don't feel like seeing anyone," it often becomes both cause and consequence. They withdraw because they feel worse, and they feel worse because they withdraw. But the exceptional older adults, even after loss, even after grief, even after friends move away or pass away, they continue to reach. They maintain contact. They show up. They answer the phone. They join the group. They sit at the table. They let themselves be known. That matters more than most people understand. If you still laugh with people, remember their stories, ask questions, tell your own, disagree, listen, comfort, tease, encourage, and participate, then you are feeding parts of the brain and spirit that cannot be nourished any other way. And no, passive noise is not the same thing. Television is not company. Scrolling is not company. Being around people without engaging is not the same as belonging. The practical goal is simple. Create recurring connection, not accidental connection. Do not wait to feel social. Build social contact into the structure of life. A weekly lunch, a regular class, a church group, a neighbor walk, a neighbor talk. This is how you build a standing call with family. Predictable connection is often more powerful than intense but infrequent connection. The synergy tip is beautiful in its simplicity. Combine people with purpose. Help someone. Teach something. Join something. Shared meaning creates stronger bonds than small talk alone. And now number 1. If you still do this between 75 and 85, you are truly one of a kind. Number 1. You still challenge your mind on purpose. Not by staying busy. Not by repeating what you have always done well. On purpose. This, more than almost anything else, distinguishes older adults who remain vividly alive from those who slowly begin to live only from memory. Because the aging brain loves efficiency. It loves the familiar route, the familiar words, the familiar stories, the familiar habits. And that makes sense. Familiarity costs less energy. But there is a hidden danger in living only inside what is already known. When the mind stops stretching, it starts protecting old pathways instead of building new ones. Life can still look functional from the outside. You can still recognize faces, follow routines, pay bills, make tea, tell stories from 1978. But something begins to narrow. Curiosity narrows. Flexibility narrows. Confidence with new information narrows. And once that narrowing becomes the default, the world starts to feel more demanding than it used to. The older adults who remain mentally striking often keep doing one unusual thing. They continue becoming beginners. They learn, they practice, they struggle a little, they tolerate being bad at something. That is rare. It is deeply rare. Because by the late 70s and 80s, many people are no longer protecting their intelligence. They are protecting their comfort. But comfort does not strengthen the brain. Challenge does. If you still learn names, ideas, skills, technologies, songs, recipes, games, phrases, tools, or crafts that are not yet familiar to you, then you are sending your brain one of the most powerful messages possible. We are not done adapting. That message matters. It keeps attention alive. It keeps humility alive. It keeps possibility alive. And perhaps most importantly, it keeps the future alive. People decline faster when they no longer expect anything new from themselves. But when an 81-year-old begins painting, or learns basic Italian, or figures out how to send photos to the grandchildren, or joins a choir, or starts keeping a serious journal, the brain is being called forward, not backward. That changes a person. You do not need mastery. You need effort. You need novelty. You need repetition. You need just enough difficulty to force the mind to reach. And the reaching is the point. If you still challenge your mind on purpose, you are protecting far more than memory. You are protecting adaptability, and adaptability is one of the deepest forms of independence. The practical version is this: choose one thing that is not already easy for you, and give it real time every day or several times a week. Read above your comfort level, learn a new skill with your hands, practice recall instead of always looking things up instantly. Write, memorize, create. Study, try again. Do not just consume, engage. The synergy tip is to combine mental challenge with community whenever possible. Learn with others. Discuss what you read, take a class, share progress. The brain grows stronger when challenge and connection reinforce each other. So let me say this clearly. If you are between 75 and 85 and you still get up with purpose, still use your body, still protect your sleep, still nourish yourself deliberately, still stay connected to people, and still challenge your mind on purpose, then you are not ordinary. You are resisting one of the strongest forces in aging, the gradual temptation to become less involved in your own life. And that is what makes you remarkable. Not perfection. Participation. That is the word. Participation in your body. Participation in your relationships. Participation in your relationships. Participation in your relationships. I have seen people in their late 70s and early 80s surprise their families, surprise their doctors, and even surprise themselves, not because they found some miracle cure, but because they kept showing up to the ordinary practices that preserve extraordinary independence. That is what this stage of life still allows. Not endless youth. Something better. A chance to remain recognizably, powerfully yourself. I'm Dr. Sophie Hale, and if this description sounds like you, then I hope you take a moment to feel the weight of that. Not vanity, not comparison, just recognition. Because in a world that expects older adults to shrink, staying engaged is a form of quiet courage. And if only some of these habits sound like you, that matters too. You do not need all six to begin changing the direction of your later years. You need one, then another, then another. A better old age is very often built that way, not in one dramatic decision, but in repeated, human, daily acts of self-respect. So if you are still doing these things, keep going. And if you have let one or two of them slip, begin again. Not because the clock can be turned back, but because life can still be strengthened from where you are. And that is a truth worth remembering at any age, but especially at 75, 80, and 85.